My dog just licked all my makeup off. Welcome back to Every Disney Movie Ever. My name is Jess, and I'm watching Every Disney Movie Ever. Today, I'm going to talk about The Watcher in the Woods. The Watcher in the Woods is a 1980 and 81 theatrical release directed by John Hough, cinematography by Hume, editing by Geoffrey, music by Stanley Myers, and it's written by Brian Clemens, Rosemary, Sisson, and Harry Spalding, based off a book of the same name by Florence Engel Randall. John Hough, I covered in the video all about Return from Witch Mountain, so if you want to learn about him, the link will be in the description. Hume is best known for Return of the Jedi, Octopussy, A View to Kill, and For Your Eyes Only. Geoffrey is best known for Take My Life, The Long Ships, and The Sound Barrier. Stanley Myers is best known for The Witches, Prick Up Your Ears, The Deer Hunter, and Jarhead. Brian Clemens is best known for The Avengers, Highlander 2, The Quickening, Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter, and Remington Steele. Rosemary and Sisson, I covered in the video all about Ride a Wild Pony, and Harry Spalding, I covered in the video all about The Ghost of Cyber Swamp. Both links will be in the description. The film stars Lynn-Holly Johnson, Kyle Richards, and Bette Davis. Lynn-Holly Johnson plays Jan, and she's best known for Your Eyes Only, Ice Castles, and Where the Boys Are. She's from Chicago and was a professional ice skater. Kyle Richards plays Ellie, and I covered her in the video about the $1 Million Dixie Deliverance. Bette Davis plays Mrs. Aylwood, and I covered her in the video about Return from Witch Mountain. Both links will be in the description. Tom Leach pitched this film to Ron Miller, saying it could be Disney's Exorcist. Ron Miller brought Brian Clemens on to write the adaptation. His ending was deemed too dark for Disney, so they brought on Rosemary and Sisson and Harry Spalding to do different revisions of it to make it more Disney-esque. It had a lot of production issues. It was filmed in England, on location, and at Pinewood Studios. Ron Miller would jut in and be like, that's too intense for Disney, that's too dark for Disney, make sure it's not too dark. So that kind of messed with production a little bit. Diane Lane was originally supposed to be Jan, but she was too busy, so Lynn-Holly Johnson was cast. And Bette Davis desperately wanted to play her younger self, and they tried with makeup really hard. And John Hough was like, Bette, I don't think we quite made it. And Bette said, you're gosh dang right. That's not what she said, but it's close enough. And the film was received horribly. It was released in April of 1980 in New York to test audiences, and after a week of absolute horrid reception about the ending specifically, Disney pulled it from theaters. They bumped up a re-release of Mary Poppins almost a year to cover the gap that they were about to make, and they hired Vincent McAveety to direct the reshoots, and they spent an extra $1 million. They had 152 different endings written by different sci-fi and thriller and horror writers, and they ended up going with their special effects or visual effects supervisors, Harrison Ellenshaw's ending. It's much better, in my opinion, and in a lot of other people's opinions. I said it cost an extra $1 million. They re-released it 18 months later, in October of 1981, and it did much better. It was much more well received. The ending was much more well received. So it was a really great idea that they did that. It made $5 million domestically, and it was released on VHS in the 80s, DVD in 2002, and DVD in 2004. The movie was originally supposed to be released on television, but it got bumped up to a theatrical release, and there are a lot of goofs and trivia about this film, as you can tell from everything I've listed, and it's all really interesting, and I didn't get to say everything, specifically the continuity errors and the goofs that I might not have noticed, but were written on IMDb. That link will be in the description, as always. I was not expecting this to be as good as it was. I really enjoyed this movie. The cinematography and music are the winners of this film. The cinematography and music blow everything else in this film out of the water. The Jaws-like POVs that are very shaky and obvious that someone's watching you gave me the absolute creeps. I have a bunch of clips of those. The slow dollies at all the right moments are so good. I have a clip of that. I will make sure all of those are playing because, oh my word, it was so good. The music from the beginning, Stanley Myers knew what he was doing. Creepy kids songs and creepy suspensey Jaws type music. So creepy, and I was so happy about it because I wasn't expecting to be scared even a little bit. And I wasn't scared per se, but I was very like, ugh! I was creeped out and cringy and like, oh no, I don't like that, and all that kind of stuff because she was being watched, and they did a really good job of doing that. I didn't have any jump scares. I didn't jump from being scared. Even though there are a couple moments in the film that are definitely jump scary, I didn't jump at all. But there are definitely a lot of creeper POV moments and a lot of dramatic zooms, which I also think I have, and a lot of like creepy children being possessed, and by a lot, I mean one child gets creepily possessed a couple times. just speaking, you know, very monotone. Kyle Richards, Ellie, gets possessed by the Watcher. And all in all, you guys, I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was really, really well done. Like I said, the cinematography and the music totally blow everything out of the water. And in regards to everything else, there are a lot of ups and downs. Lynn-Holly Johnson, overall, I think was actually really good. I think she did a great job. I wasn't expecting her to do a great job because she was an ice skater originally. But she has strong scenes and she has weak scenes. Her strong scenes tend to be her alone or her with her little sister or, you know, stuff like that. There's a scene where she talks to John Keller. That scene between the both of them is terrible. They're both awful at acting. The scene between her and Tom is incredible. I love that scene. And then just a lot of the scenes where she's desperately trying to figure everything out or she's genuinely creeped out, I think she did a really good job in. Otherwise, she's kind of whiny and has like a high-pitched voice that's kind of like, that's a lot. Kyle Richards, I didn't think was very good at the beginning, but then by the end, when she was being like kind of like stiff and creepy, I thoroughly enjoyed. I thought she did a great job. The rest of it are fine. They're not in the movie enough for me to be mad at them for not being good or being really good. It's, you know, whatever. The writing, for how many issues it had, was actually pretty okay. It took its time. It's kind of one of those like older 80s, 70s feeling, takes its time suspense creep situation where it's like they're doing normal things, they're living their normal life, and this outside thing is happening to them. And I thought that was really cool to go back to, kind of. I thought it was fun to watch. You know how like Jaws is very like they're just living their lives and a shark starts attacking everything, and it doesn't really become about catching the shark until a lot into the movie, and that's how this movie felt. It was like they're living their life and they're kind of having all these things happen to them, and it doesn't become about that thing until later into the movie. That's the best way I can describe that, and I genuinely really enjoyed that. I thought it was really good. I'm sure there have been a lot of visual motifs and just themes in previous films, but this film, I really noticed mirrors. They used mirrors and glass, like window panes and stained glass, and just a lot of reflective situations a lot in this film. It was a very big repetitive motif. John Hough, I noticed there was a shot toward the beginning of this movie of the kids walking toward the car, and you could see them in the side mirror of the car. John Hough used that shot in Return from Witch Mountain with the bus. And I remember being like, oh, cool shot. And then in this film, the same shot happened, and I was like, oh, John Hough directed both movies. That must have been his influence. But this film really plays with mirrors and glass and reflections, like big time. And it's the effects they pull off with not being able to see the camera and all these reflections is so well done. I was very impressed with their camera work and how you don't see the camera in any of the mirrors and how many mirrors are actually in the film. It was just really well done, and it was exciting to see such a big visual motif that carries throughout the film. I don't know if I said something about it in the video about Return from Witch Mountain, but I didn't enjoy Bette Davis's performance in that movie. I loved her performance in this movie. I thought she was much stronger in this role than she was in the one in Return from Witch Mountain. The film is about a family that moves into a home in England that is semi-haunted. It's got a watcher in the woods. Mrs. Aylwood is the landlady, and she lost her daughter 30 years ago, Karen, and a lot of people believe Karen is dead, while a few people believe she disappeared and isn't dead. And Jan and Ellie, the sisters, are haunted by the Watcher, who they think is Karen. That's what the film is basically about. I'm about to talk about all three endings. I cried. Know that. If you do not want me to spoil all three endings for you, please go watch the film and come back, or go watch the other two that you haven't seen and come back, or just keep watching and be spoiled, or skip ahead and don't listen to this, you know, whatever. I'm going to talk about all three endings. First, I'm going to talk about the original ending, the ending that was planned, the ending that they wanted to have but couldn't release because they were behind schedule. So they decided to release it anyway. This ending is the original planned ending. Jan stands in the seance circle and gets taken by this creepy, ugly, horrible CG practical watcher insectoid looking creature. gets taken by that thing and beamed to another, like, world where a spaceship is crashed. And Jan finds Karen inside this, like, gray beam, frozen, not being able to figure out anything. And she takes her, and they embrace, and she finds her, and the Watcher beams them back to Earth. And then Jan and Ellie are walking back home, and Karen and Mrs. Aylwood get reunited, and Jan and Ellie keep talking about the Watcher, and the movie's resolution kind of solely depends on Jan explaining what the Watcher is, where he's from, it's from, why, etc., etc. It's just so rushed and so lame. And, like, you actually see the sequence on the spaceship in the original planned ending. But that's not the ending that got released in 1980. Alternate ending number 2. The ending in the week release in 1980, Jan gets taken by the creepy insectoid Watcher, which I have pictures of, you'll see, beamed away. Everyone freaks out and is like, where's Jan? Where's Jan? Jan gets beamed back with Karen. No explanation of where she went, and that relies heavily on Jan explaining to Ellie what exactly happened. Also, in the original ending, the one before this one, sorry, there was a lot more emphasis on witchcraft and seances and, like, the occult. There was a lot more mention of that. So in the ending that was in theaters, it didn't have any of that, and it didn't have the scene where she goes to the spaceship and finds Karen. It just has her explaining what happened, where she went, and, like, kind of why. And that's why it was so poorly received, because we were just supposed to accept that that creepy creature was just like, yep, okay, here we go, bye. Like, that's why it was so poorly received. And it is bad. I watched it, not the best. The ending they went with, which I'm about to talk about, is the best ending in my opinion. This ending, there is a little bit less emphasis on witchcraft and the occult and seances, but there is still a little bit. Mrs. Aylwood still tells her she thinks she shouldn't go through with the seance because something bad happened to her daughter when it happened, so she doesn't want something bad to happen to her. Jan deals with the seance, and it's a lot more focused on that scene. It doesn't cut away to the parents, it doesn't cut away, it's a lot more focused on that scene, instead of having a creepy insectoid, creepy big Watcher creature. Ellie, Jan's little sister, gets possessed by this creature that we never see now, and gets brought to the chapel, and says we have to do this at the eclipse right now so we can switch back because we got accidentally switched 30 years ago, and it can only happen on this eclipse. We've been waiting forever. I've been waiting forever, whatever. And then all of it starts to happen as they continue with the hands linked seance, and it looks like Jan is going to be taken, and the it just becomes a lot of light. Like, Ellie starts to be, light up, and there's a big beam of light next to her, and, like, you don't see a creature anymore. It's just supposed to be like some ethereal metaphysical creature, if you will. And right at the last second, Mike grabs Jan, so Jan's never even taken anywhere. And the creature leaves Ellie, and Karen is left standing on the big creepy coffin thing in the middle of the chapel. And Mrs. Aylwood comes to the chapel instead of them going back and Jan explaining everything, because in that scene, the creature, the Watcher, if you will, that was possessed by Ellie, used Ellie to explain everything, how they got switched, why they got switched, that kind of stuff. And it is a much better ending. Jan not leaving and going to get Karen, just Karen being sent back and, like, Mike saving Jan. Much better ending, and it was very satisfying. I was very satisfied with that end. Props to Harrison Ellenshaw. He killed it. That's all I have for The Watcher in the Woods. I genuinely enjoyed this movie. I thought it was suspenseful. I thought I got the job done. I think it's hilarious that we have a scary movie right at the beginning of September. The first video of September is a scary movie. It's officially spoopy time! So here we are with The Watcher in the Woods. I actually really enjoyed this movie. I definitely recommend it. I would recommend watching it for sure. I think I'm gonna give it 8. I think I'm gonna give it 8 Watchers out of 10. Our total movie count is... Our cry count is... Parent death toll is still the same. If you want to keep up with what movie I'm watching when, follow me on Instagram or Twitter and you'll find out what movie I'm watching when. I put out videos every Monday and Friday. Until next time, comment, like, subscribe, but I'm not sure if you are. So you do, and don't be... I mean, there's not really an evil character in the movie. Don't be the kids that sent their friend to another freaking dimension. Don't, like, have a creepy, like, initiation with your friends. Just be friends with them. Also, happy Labor Day. I genuinely like this movie. I think it's good. I genuinely enjoyed it.